everyone, welcome back to my super distracting background situation. I don't really know when I'm gonna have a spot to vlog, but hopefully it's soon. Wink wink Jared if you're watching this. Today we're talking all about breastfeeding and the things that I wish I knew when I first started breastfeeding. These tips are really from my personal experience, but I hope that I can bring and shed some light on what's very important when you begin your breastfeeding journey. If you are newly pregnant, if you are expecting your baby very soon, or if you're newly postpartum and you're wondering what is happening with your body and your milk supply, stay tuned, watch the entire video. I hope that this is helpful, and I think that this goes untalked about, so we gonna talk about it today. First thing I want to suggest, and my first tip, is to learn about the anatomy of the breast. Learn about how milk supply works, the connection between you and the baby that you're breastfeeding. Learn about what this supply and demand relationship really looks like. Babies are born into this world and they are ready to breastfeed. They know how to latch onto the breast, they know the smell of the breast, they know everything that they need to know to begin that breastfeeding journey. Breastfeeding can go on beautifully undisturbed without any outside help. However, every breastfeeding journey is different. So I highly recommend, after you learn about the anatomy of the breast and how this natural relationship is established, I recommend to find resources to really help kind of confirm these things that you're learning on your own. And by that, I mean lactation consultants. The most experienced lactation support that you can potentially get in your postpartum healing is an IBCLC. And the reason that I say to look this up in pregnancy is so you are prepared if something is happening in the first week of breastfeeding and you don't want to head to Facebook groups for your answers, and I wouldn't do that because everyone's breastfeeding journey is so different. Don't go to Facebook for these things. Get a lactation consultant in your area or someone that you can go on FaceTime with, but I highly recommend doing it in person. You have the number, maybe you already had a conversation with them, maybe you've already established a bit of a relationship with them and they'll already have a day where they come over after you have your baby. It's good to have this resource lined up, or else you may rely on Google after you have your baby on some of the issues that you're having, and it could potentially lead to premature ending of the breastfeeding journey. So of course that's not everyone's experience with Googling, like sometimes you find your answer, but because lactation is such a specialized topic, it is really person to person and so many things play a role in that. A lactation consultant can really help you pinpoint any issue that you may be having. It is so normal to have sore nipples after beginning your breastfeeding journey. Within the first week or so, it should start to diminish a bit, but those first couple days, you're gonna be gasping a little when they latch on. You may be gasping a little if you decide to pump. This is normal and something that is completely natural that you do not have to wipe off your breasts after you put it on is coconut oil, or there are a few other brands that I really like that are nursing butters, and you don't have to wipe them off before baby latches again. So I recommend getting a really good coconut oil or a nursing butter that is lanolin free. And lanolin is wool wax. Babies cannot consume that. You have to wipe it off your nipples before nursing, and it doesn't heal chapped nipples. Thing that you should know, number 4, I really recommend looking up engorgement and how to prevent any clogged ducts from happening. Engorgement is when the breasts become hardened, when milk supply comes in around between day 3 and 5, and sometimes your breast will become hardened overnight because there's been a few hours without feeding, or even during the afternoon if baby's taking a long nap. Breastfeeding is a supply and demand relationship. Babies are breastfeeding very, very frequently in the early weeks because they are stimulating your milk production to sustain them as they grow. So as long as your body is being told, okay, milk is being taken out, then it will replenish, and it will continue to replenish as milk is removed. This is why allowing your baby to feed whenever they need to is so important, because they're doing it for a reason. These frequent feedings are called cluster feedings. cluster feedings happen during growth spurts, and I highly recommend to look up when those take place, because some nights you're going to be wondering, oh my goodness, I just slept so good last night and now they're up every hour wanting to feed. That is because at night they are stimulating your milk supply for the days coming. The next things to know, I have no idea what number we're on. It may feel like you are leaking all the time. It's normal. It doesn't mean that you're having an oversupply. It doesn't mean anything to worry about, really. Your body is still adjusting to how much your baby needs in the first few weeks and even months of breastfeeding. So you may leak for a couple weeks or a couple months and it may end. Some leak all the way up until they're done breastfeeding, and some never leak at all. I was somebody who never leaked at all, for your information, if you care to know that. And if you want to be precautious about it and get some nursing pads in pregnancy, it will be helpful, because at night if you wake up and your shirt is all wet and you're having hot sweats and baby has to eat and you just feel like a mess, it's not the funnest time. I highly recommend getting some nursing pads just in case you are somebody who does leak. Another thing that is really great for that, they are called Milkies. I'm not sure what they're called. I'm having a little brain. Milk savers. You don't have to pump. You don't have to if you don't want to. And this is why it's a good thing to get in touch with a lactation consultant if you are wondering what will be best for your situation, because some people like to establish a really big storage of milk for when they go back to work. If they are somebody who has to go back to work in 6 weeks, they may want to pump in those first 6 weeks so they can really help establish that milk storage. Some will feel like more of a supply and demand type of pumping schedule works for them. So when they go back to work, they may pump the night before and the morning of, so their baby has a few bottles until they get back home. Baby's latch matters. It shouldn't hurt you after the first few weeks, after sore nipples are not a thing any longer. You shouldn't be feeling pain when baby latches. And if you are, they may have something called a lip tie or a tongue tie or something else that is interrupting this normal latch that should be pain-free. Sometimes pediatricians don't always catch them and they can't always tell what's happening. And honestly, not all pediatricians really know much about breastfeeding. Don't go to your pediatrician with your breastfeeding questions. Just don't do it. My biggest pet peeve is when you go to the pediatrician with your baby that is not even a week old and they recommend formula. And a supplementation is you breastfeed your baby and then you give them a bottle of formula or even a bottle of breast milk. When they start to really push supplementing in the first week of your baby's life, that is a sign to contact the lactation consultant, because they don't know about anything that your body is doing. They are probably not even asking you questions about what your body is doing, and they're not lactation professionals. Another thing to know is if you begin breastfeeding and you're wondering if you're making enough milk, there is a scale out there that is a changing table scale that I'll leave it down below. I'm not exactly sure what it's called, but I'll put it down below. I think they're on Amazon. But it is helpful to have a scale if you are seriously wondering whether or not you're feeding your baby enough, whether or not they're getting enough or gaining enough weight. And this is also really good for if you do have that conversation with your pediatrician and they're like, they're not gaining enough. And if you get worried in between pediatrician appointments, then you can have this scale at your house and you can do this on your own. I want to make the point of, before you go taking a lactation tea, like a supplementation tea like Milkmaid or something with herbs in it to increase your supply, know that this doesn't work on its own. It's super important to make sure you're eating a balanced diet. So just make sure that balance is on point before you lean into teas and cookies and things like that to help your supply. I started out exclusively breastfeeding for the first 4 months, and around the 4th month, I didn't feel like I was producing enough milk. And this is sometimes what being online can do to you. I was completely fine. I was probably not eating as good as I should, but I was pumping 4 ounces on each breast, which is more than enough, and I thought that that wasn't enough. There was times in that 4-month period where I wasn't pumping much of anything, but I was still feeding on demand, and during that time, instead of looking to a lactation consultant or somebody that could help me after successfully breastfeeding for 4 months, I started to supplement with formula. And from there, my breast supply just went down. I could tell she was fussy at the breast. I could tell she wasn't eating as much from me. I didn't fill up as I usually did, and I didn't feel like I was producing as much as I usually did, and I wasn't, because I was giving her formula. And because I started supplementing with formula around the 4-month mark, I only actually breastfed her until 6 months, and it was a really hard journey to end because I liked it. I loved breastfeeding, and it's something that I needed to kind of close the door on because it was stressing me out and I didn't know my options, and Google was really confusing to me. I didn't know that I should reach out to a lactation consultant. Her pediatrician just kind of didn't even try to help me, offer resources, anything like that. I didn't know about doulas at the time, and I felt lost, and I needed to end my journey with breastfeeding. So I just want you to know that if you are heading into this journey, it is natural, but that doesn't mean that it's easy, and it does have to be taught. And I believe that information is key to having a really good breastfeeding journey. It can happen where you have no resources and you just have this amazing breastfeeding journey and it goes completely fine. That actually happened with my mother and with other people that I've known, but for some reason, sometimes it doesn't go that way, and I've learned that that happens quite frequently. So it's always good to know your resources. You need to be taught these things. It's something that is very sacred and beautiful, and I just think if we knew more about what's going on in our body and had the resources, were in touch with the professionals, we would have more success in breastfeeding as a society. And I think there are more people that are leaning into breastfeeding and are really learning about information and resources, but I just want to do my part in sharing my experience, helping anyone that's stepping into this for the first or even second or third time, because every baby is different, every breastfeeding experience is different, and it's really good to know your options and what to kind of avoid when you are looking to stick with breastfeeding for a long time. If you are not able to breastfeed your baby, or if you stop early and you don't make that mark that you intended to, don't shame yourself. You are doing the best that you possibly can, and I just want to make sure that you have the resources that you deserve in order to learn all that you can before you have your baby. So I just want to thank you guys so much for being here, for listening to me rant about one of my favorite topics ever. I hope that this brought some things to light for you and gave you some information that you may not have heard before. If you enjoy these chats, these real chats that I just kind of throw together based off of my personal experience, feel free to leave some topics down below and let's talk about it. Thank you guys so much for being here, and I'll see you guys in the next video.